After working in the food and beverage industry for many years, Chef Derick Wade has transitioned into the private chef catering world. Today, I talk one-on-one with the chef about his new business and what's next for the food and beverage industry for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Chef Derick Wade, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me today, Quintin.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the chef of Coastal Catch Charleston, and I know that obviously you dive into private dining on that particular end. So tell me, chef, what are you dishing out these days?
So recently, I made the switch into starting my own company, which we are calling Coastal Catch, and that is private chef and catering. But we also do restaurant consulting as well. So I have some projects with some various restaurants throughout the region, just kind of helping them get sorted and start up some new companies as well. But we're doing all kinds of really cool stuff. So I actually, in the process of starting my company, I kind of left the normal grind of the kitchen. And I've spent the last 2 months actually on Charleston Oyster Farm, working with the guys out there on that operation and getting my hands, in the pluff mud, So literally, we're in there flipping cages, and we're in the water every day, seeing the sun come up right off of Stono River right there. So it's been really beautiful, and kind of going back to the roots of why I got into the whole culinary aspect. The whole movement of trying to basically, like we say out there, march to table or march to plate. So I've been focusing mainly on, local seafood, oysters farmed in wild. I do collaborations with a bunch of other farmers in the region as well. So we're, as Coastal Catch, we definitely are seafood based, but we offer all kinds of different varieties as well of different meats and stuff that we're sourcing locally from different farmers, including, Peculiar Farm as well. So yeah, we try to curate all of our dinners to the guests. Well, I don't have a blanket menu for people. I prefer that they contact me, we vibe, and we figure out what we can do to make a unique experience for the individual, instead of just trying to be like, oh, this is our menu, this is what we can provide for you. So that's kind of the basis of the operation currently, and it's been a lot of fun. We've been doing private events on Kiwa, Seabrook, and kind of all these different nice homes right on the water. So it's been a fun change of scenery from the normal kitchen environment, I would say.
So, chef, let me ask you, what got you from the normal pace of the kitchen to now having your own business and doing private dining?
Well, it's been something I've always been interested in doing. And it just kind of came about at the end of last year where, my wife and I kind of discussed, the future, what we're trying to do. And, I have 2 young sons, and, the kind of the daily grind, and, my sons are getting older now too, or my wife is wanting to go back to what her career is and everything. So, we kind of wanted to make something where we had a little more control of our scheduling, and honestly, I've been doing events for the last 10 years all over the place, and I really enjoy that atmosphere, versus I like the restaurant environment sometimes, but I like when people are celebrating. Nothing brings people together like food does, and being able to be in an environment where people are celebrating something, or you're part of a festival or a charity. We work with March of Dimes. I'm doing this Sunday, we're doing shucked and sauced for the park conservation, and awesome cause to put some more money back into our parks. So I just was able to take what I love to do with that side of the culinary aspect, and monetize it to a point where it's sustainable for us and our family. And we're just going to try to see, how we can grow and run with that. So,
Yes, sir. And chef, this might be a silly question, but how exactly, with your resources now, do you actually bring the people together with food?
well, I love being able to tell stories. I guess I've always been a storyteller. I get caught away even It probably happened in this interview. You ask me one question, I go off on a tangent, I end up somewhere completely different. That's so I've always been able to captivate an audience, I guess, or at least be able to engage people on that kind of level. So I like to make interactive experiences. I like to try to bring something, be able to tell the story of the farm that we're bringing the ingredients from, and not just from like a chef aspect where, like I work closely with his farm, I work on that farm, so being able to say, there's nothing I love saying more than I harvested these oysters this morning and I'm bringing them to you. And then being able to take that on a level. And plus getting your hands in the mud, and working with the farmers. There's some of the most intelligent people I've been around in that kind of community. So there's things you learn as a chef when it comes to the flavor profiles and how this affects the experience of the guest. But when you really get on a tangent with a farmer that is growing these things, they go off on a whole different marine biology aspect of how this is affecting these things, and how this aquaculture is being affected, this ecosystem within the water, and how we're seeing different species of things, like the bottlenose dolphins that only are in our waterways and stuff. And it's like every day I'm learning something new out there. And I guess you get to a certain point in the kitchen, where the learning kind of plateaus. You're doing more of the teaching than the learning. You're granted, I've still tried to learn every day when I was in a kitchen, at least something, a technique, or some sort of aspect to bring to the table. But I feel like going from being the one with the knowledge to the one receiving more knowledge, and I still am able to give my input on things of how it affects the aspect of the restaurant side. So there's some mutual exchange of information, but I like not being the smartest person in the room. I think that brings a lot to the ability to learn, and being able to learn and teach, and then teach through learning, and then be taught and teach at the same time. All these things kind of come together to be really fun, and it continues to grow when you get in that kind of community. I've been in the oyster community for like about the last 4 years heavily, like going with Oyster South and going to oyster symposiums, working with farmers, going to hatcheries, these different charities, and learning these aspects. So the oyster community, as opposed to some other, I guess, different types of business communities, is way more open to exchange of information. Like people will come together and they're not competitive in the sense, like everybody's competitive, don't get me wrong, but they're not competitive in the sense where they're gatekeeping information. They're people that want to spread the information to other people like-minded that want to better our environment and our communities. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I mean, like I love being associated with that kind of aspect of things. And that's what originally I was, kind of had my toe in the water, but now I'm wearing the fishing bibs and I'm all the way in the water, so.
Right. Yeah, that's really amazing. I want to back it up just a second, Chef. But well, let me ask you this, Dan. Who is Chef Derick Wade in the kitchen?
So I'm originally from northern Wisconsin. I've been a chef for, I don't know how to age myself here, but it's been a minute. I mean, like 20 years now. And I got to, growing up in Wisconsin, I got an opportunity to get out of there, and I moved to Alaska, and I worked as a cook up there, and then became one of the chefs of a group up there. And it was a seasonal job where we got to work for like 3-4 months, and then everybody would shift gears, and you get into this kind of transient workforce community. And it's like people are talking throughout the year, like, we're going to Hawaii, we're going to Thailand, we're going to the mountains. So I got on this work and travel aspect, and I spent I'd say like 7 years doing that. And we got to travel all over the world. I met my wife through it. And so taking that and relating it into the kitchen, I think that's part of I am big on building cultures inside of the kitchen when I was in the kitchen. Obviously I have my own styles, which I like to teach people, but I think the core of everything that you do in any type of business and any type of kitchen company is your community that you build with inside of it. And I want to make the people that work for me better. I want to get them to the position when they're leaving me to take a better opportunity, not leaving me. It's how I always judged it. If you left me when I was a chef and you went to go work for another chef that was high caliber, or you had a great opportunity that you took, I took that as a compliment to me and to us working together. If you left me to take some other job that just was a job just to take it, it made me reevaluate our relationship, because I think that sometimes in the industry it's tough. You spend a lot of time training people and you pour a lot of your heart and energy into people, and some gatekeep that. They want to keep you there. You've been with me, we want to hold you here. Oh, you want to leave me, and it's this personal thing. But to
Yeah.
me, that's a compliment and it attests to your culture that you build within that. If you can build people up to be confident enough to take on and be chefs themselves, and leaving operations in better standings than it was when you left. And that's how I try to be, and that's kind of my ethos on who I am in a kitchen. I want you to come in and treat people like people, not like sitting there dictatorship. Don't get me wrong. I want people to be on time, but if you're 5 minutes late, I'm not all over you. I don't know. Traffic is nuts. I live on John's Island, so we have all these issues. You can't expect everybody to be the same person and have the same interests inside of the same company and values that you do, depending on what position they're in. Granted, I want overall respect and different, pillars and core values that I expect people to follow inside of the operations. But, we all have different interests. We all have different lives. And that's not a thing to be suppressed. It's actually something to be embraced. I think that the differences that we all hold is what makes us better. And that's what makes America a beautiful country, is bringing all these people together that are different. And we're not all the same. We are all from different areas, different types of situations growing up, different types of cultures with food and aspects. And especially as a chef, that's the most beautiful thing, traveling and going somewhere where I have no idea what any of this is. Like, that is some of my most fun adventures. And that's just something I've always tried to build into and try to support. And, they say you can learn something from anyone, and I've had it. We're in a kitchen and, we've taught people, this is how we'll use a tomato as an example. This is how we cut the tomato. This is how we do it here. This is here. Then all of a sudden, Juan comes in from Mexico and he bangs down that tomato and you're like, bro, and there's two ways to handle that. Some chefs will be like, no, da, 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 we do it this way. Me, I'm like, hey, everybody come over here and look what he's doing. This is how we do this from now on, because it's twice as fast and more efficient. And, I think people can, with that kind of attitude, you can accomplish a lot more, and you create an environment where people feel comfortable and they want to, stay with you and build into that company. And then then the food is itself. That translates right into the food. You have a happy environment that you work in, people are going to want to be there. They're going to take pride in what they do, and they're going to take ownership on that community that you built inside of that company, and the food takes care of itself at that point.
And when I learned about attitudes, everything, when I used to work at Hyman's back in the early 2000s. But chef, what is the art of food these days?
It's that is a great question, because I'd say, with trends and different stuff, it goes into so many genres and subcultures and, different aspects. I think Charleston's a great example of that. You can get, we don't do Michelin down here, but there's some chefs that would be Michelin stars if they did. And you can have that Michelin dining experience, or you can go out to Bowen's Island and have something right on the water, super casual. So to me, I like to live somewhere in the middle. I like locally sourced ingredients. I like, obviously sustainable practices as an ethos to do all that. But when it comes to it, I want the fish to taste like a fish. I want that sauce to be simple ingredients. I was kind of raised up on, like Italian style cuisine, French style cuisine, where it is, we're not throwing in 100 different ingredients into everything, and that's kind of more my style. And I don't knock on anybody else. There's people who are making, different aspects, which it's fun, you know. We've seen it a lot in Charleston. I think if you go a little too outside of the box and you try, you know, you make it something where your restaurant is only a place that you can go on your anniversary, or, you know, it's this experience. We do have enough here with the tourism in the community to be able to sustain some of those types of restaurants if you can get on, you know, the right caliber of being able to execute it in consistency. But I think, you know, for my opinion, I feel like the next generation is, and where we're moving is kind of less opulence, you know, more um experience and more, you know, like knowing where your food is coming from. You know, we have a big movement in the country now, you know, like banning red dye out of food, you know, these different things, which is great. You know, we're starting to actually, I think a lot of people always have been looking, but I think on the more mass group of people, people are looking at what's in our food, you know. And I think the future of, you know, like cuisine, I think the most successful restaurants are somewhere in that middle ground where they're serving really good food, that's not too complicated. But don't get me wrong, I like going out and having like the 20-course tasting dinner where I'm like, what is this?
Yes.
You just blew my mind. So there is a place for that. But I guess that's just my particular take on what my style is, you know.
What food describes you?
Mm, Style wise of what I like to do, you know, like what I like to cook for people, I would say, you know, like seafood and bright colors. You know, I really like dishes where, you know, when it goes by you in a restaurant, you look at it, you're like, what's that? That pops. I want to try that, you know. So I really like vibrant food, very light but aggressive flavors, if that even makes sense, you know, like where it's like, oh, this is light, but then boom, something slaps you, that vinegar hits you, you know, and
Yes.
it's like gets that pop to it. But then for me though, like I don't know, you know, I'm a pretty simple guy, you know, so you give me a good nice smash burger, you know, nice, you know, we're going to do pizza night here. I like to do with my kids once a week, and I make my own dough, and we do a 48-hour fermentation process, and we cook it in our uni pizza oven. So, you know, but at the house we eat pretty simple, you know, but good. But when I like to show out and show food, that's kind of, I like to go in that, you know, seafood route, and that I'd say explains more of my style as a chef.
How much has your style changed in the past 20 years?
I would say style hasn't changed aggressively, but technique and um execution has gotten just better. You know, you learn what works and what doesn't work. I say, you know, presentation wise of how to play things different. You know, you take any chef and you go look back at their very old stuff, you know, and ones that when we hate it, we're like trying to delete that. Like, I didn't make that, man. What, you know, like, but I'd say flavor wise, yeah, some things have changed, you know, but I feel I've gotten more cultured and spent more time, you know, traveling and learned to use different newer ingredients and different things. But I think the overall ethics of, you know, my style of food has always kind of remained in the same wheelhouse, you know, of knowing where your food comes from, and, you know, not just that, how people are farming, you know, like, you know, are these practices, you know, sustainable, especially when you're in the position where you're feeding a lot of people, because you're in a position of power when it comes to being able to, we call it purchasing power in the industry. I've worked for different restaurants, I've done high scale things, and I have, you know, a purchasing power. We're buying 100,000 pounds of shrimp this year. Where am I going to get that shrimp from? You know, and who's getting that money? You know, and what are we doing with that? Is it going in the country? Is it going out of the country? You know, and that does get difficult for some people, you know, and some establishments and some different business models, because, you know, some people have a very tight box to live in. There's that very small margins in the restaurant industry. So I've had to be in positions where I've had to buy imported shrimp. I've been in positions where, you know, we only would use local, and that was on a scale above me where I didn't really get to, you know, I could present my case, but it wasn't my ultimate decision when it came to the financial aspect. And that's kind of why I love being on my own now. Like, I'm my own boss. Nobody gets to tell me where I do my stuff, where I go, what I do. And it kind of gives you a little bit more power to, you know, be able to be more of an advocate for the community, I guess.
What's working and what's not working when it comes to the food and beverage industry today, Chef?
I think high prices aren't working for any of us. I think we're all kind of struggling in this current environment. Charleston sees it the most, I think, with the restaurants opening and closing. We get a lot of flash in the pan. Out on John's Island, we've had a bunch of closures lately. I feel what works is medium to high end casual environment. I think like that's a business model that's sustainable. People want to go. Our economy is tough that we're living in. Over the last many years, we've been dealing with more and more inflation, and people are trying to make ends meet. So trying to it's hard for people to be able to dine out at more expensive restaurants, and it's hard for those restaurants to have a profit margin on these ingredients that are also becoming more and more expensive. So that middle ground is my opinion of kind of, what's sustainable, like having somewhere where you have a very approachable menu and you do accessible food, but then having, like a special menu or a special list where you can have your chefs and your cooks go outside the box and be able to do something fun or offer something that's a little more not price point friendly for some people, but people that want to try something different. I think having that kind of business model is going to be something that we're going to see sticking around more often. Versus, it takes a high caliber and highly established chef to be able to continue a really exclusive fine dining environment here in the city. And unless they're attached to a major group or in a hotel that has dispensable income. And, I've worked for large hotels, I've worked for large resorts, and, we kind of write off the restaurants as a amenity, in certain aspects. Granted, they're given their budgets and stuff, but they can they can lose money because the golf course makes up for it or this makes up for it. So I feel like standalone restaurants that try to operate on that level, unless they have a major financial backing, are going to be a little more short lived in our current times.
Where do you see this heading in the next 5 to 10 years besides that business model that you just mentioned?
I see more. Actually, I was just having a talk with a friend of mine. We're going to start this. I'm working on our pop up series that I'm doing for myself, but we're going to kind of collaborate together. And she does jewelry out of oysters, and we're going to start this experience tour that she's doing, kind of promoting her artwork that she does with the oysters, and um, kind of making a dinner series out of it. And I think like we kind of talked about this. She was mentioning kind of studying the trends with luxury fashion, and that's something she does, and kind of what they were teaching in Europe when she was over there of what the future of this next generation is. And I think it's experiences, like I think for being able to have a more immersive experience for your for your restaurant, or if you're doing pop-up series where you're doing dinners and you're on the water and you have a farmer coming in and talking about his farm and live fire and like these things, I think are trending more where people want to, if they're doing and more in my line of work versus the typical restaurant. Now when we get into the more of the private dining side and catering side, people are wanting more of an experience that they can walk away from, not just paying $200 to go to a 5 course tasting dinner and it's just wine and dinner and people are just talking amongst themselves. But like I said, bringing in a farmer or, having, talking about different things and having, really we were talking about not like in a panel format essentially, but being able to have multiple speakers kind of be able to bring together talking points and kind of banter back and forth off of each other where people can engage, where a diverse group of guests can kind of cling to one or the other, like, oh, I want to talk to the chef because I'm so interested in this. Well, I want to talk to the farmer, and I love jewelry. I want to talk to this lady and her artwork. So I think these kind of events are what we're looking more at and what are seeming to be more trendy and what people are wanting to book more in my current industry. So
You talk about that current industry, chef. What cobwebs have long distorted that picture when it comes to private dining?
Uh, I think people think it's unapproachable, like I think people are like, oh, hire a chef to come to my house. I couldn't imagine that, when I was younger off of our budget. Yeah, I'm going to hire a chef to come cook. But when you're looking at it, you take a group of 12 people, all right, and you're renting a house on somewhere like Kiwa where you all come together for, say, a bachelor party or a bachelorette party or whatever. And you take those 12 group of 12, you get in a car, you got to drive an hour to downtown or go to something, and you're going out and eating out and going and drinking out. What's the price tag on that? Especially downtown, and you want to go have a good experience. Now flip that around. You go, you get your nice drinks. You already got this awesome house. A lot of people that are coming down here, are renting these places for the tourist aspect, or are local people that have these beautiful homes. And it's like, why would you not want to showcase that home? And it's actually way more cost efficient to hire a chef to come out and cook for you inside your home and be able to have a group of friends over. And everybody's staying in that house safety wise. Nobody's drinking and driving. Nobody's
Right.
leaving. It's. I feel like there used to be a taboo on it where it's just like only people of more wealthy means were able to have a chef come cook for them at their house. And I think now we're looking at our current prices of what the price tag is on going out for a night with you and your wife, or and you and your family, or a couple friends going out. Like, what you're spending is actually right in that same range of what you could have for having somebody great come out and cook for you and have a great experience, and and clean it up. That's what that's really about, right? It's not just the food. You
Right.
want you want somebody to come cook so you don't have to cook, and you want that house to be clean when they leave, and
Right.
that's something that we take care of as well. So,
Well, and how can people experience your experience as a private chef now?
Definitely, please reach out. My email is chef Derick, that's DERICKW @gmail.com, or check me out on Instagram. It's chef_D Wade. We also have coastal_catch_Charleston on Instagram as well. So check us out, DM us. We'd love to consult on some stuff. We're working on our website right now as we continue to grow. So definitely reach out and we can cater a very custom experience for you inside your home.
That's really amazing. Well, Chef Derick Wade, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close Ups.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Quentin. I enjoyed it.
Likewise, thank you.